Stand up. So greetings again, fellow Toastmasters and guests. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I tried to try my hand today at an impromptu speech since I was in person, and giving in-person speeches are a little bit different than giving virtual speeches, just because the setting is different, etc. So try my hand here a little bit. The reason I'd like to talk to you all today, or how I was inspired to give this speech, is one, I live and breathe manufacturing every day in my duties. But two, as I walk through the library at NIST, you see all these cool things that are made in America and that were used throughout history. And it really did inspire me to have a conversation with everybody around why I believe manufacturing is cool. And I say that sometimes with a smile, but I truly do believe manufacturing is cool. If you think about manufacturing historically, we think about hammering nails or turning screws or doing the same repetitive thing over and over and over again, and how fickle that industry can be as well. I think we all recall the mass layoffs when the automobile sector was hit hard, the mass layoffs that come from the transition away from mining and some historical fuel sources that have been used. And people were left with a bad taste about manufacturing, so bad that we rarely talk about it in school anymore. And so we don't really know what's going on in manufacturing. Now, in my role, working with NIST's Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, we are trying to overcome that stigma around manufacturing, where we think about manufacturing as being old, you work in a dark, dingy area, and you come home all dirty with, your knees scraped up and things like that. In actuality, manufacturing has evolved just as the global economy has evolved. For instance, think about the automobile sector. That is transitioning away from internal combustion engines or ICE engines and switching over to battery electric vehicle engines. And the same competencies or skills that were going to be used in the workforce to create those automobiles is transitioning wholly into a different skill set that's needed for electric vehicles. So instead of needing significant welding capabilities or understanding, the nuance of how you cut or slice a screw, instead what's needed are engineers, are programmers who can work to really program robotics, augmented reality, to really build some of these different technologies and products that are needed to power the battery electric vehicles. And in general, manufacturing is going through a revolution, what is called Industry 4.0, where we're seeing technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, robots, cobots, big data. We're using machine learning, we're using artificial intelligence, and that's what's most needed in manufacturing right now. So we're really trying to overcome this stigma, and who the real audience is to try to convince people that, hey, manufacturing is cool again, are the younger generation, are the school-age children. They don't really get exposed to manufacturing. As parents, you don't want your kids to go into manufacturing. You want them to become a doctor. You want them to become an engineer, a scientist. But engineer and scientists are needed in manufacturing again. And manufacturing also doesn't always require a 4-year collegiate degree. You can go to a trade school or to a community college, and you can end up with a really cool, high-paying job in the manufacturing industry. So I'm hearing stories from manufacturers who are working with some of these cutting-edge technologies, such as producing semiconductors, which are these small chips that are in every electronic that we're using, but there's no US domestic production really of semiconductors. So there's really a big opportunity here. But one of the challenges with bringing those industries back is they can't find a workforce who's interested in being part or in working in manufacturers. So there's really a big opportunity there. There's a lot of opportunity for children, for diverse communities to get engaged with manufacturing who have never been engaged with it before. But the real key is, how do we get people to understand that manufacturing is cool again? And for instance, we think about one particular aircraft manufacturer that we can bring example from, and they're going out and they're trying to hire individuals to work in their manufacturing plant. Instead of focusing on individuals who have skills on the production line or working on machining or welding, they're looking for kids who like to play video games. The reason they're looking for kids who like to play video games is because they're doing a lot of coding. They're actually working with manufacturing where they're using a controller similar to a controller that they use for Xbox or PS5. And that's the skills that are now needed in manufacturing to really create a difference and to increase the capabilities here in the U.S. So as we think about manufacturing, it's not the old dark, dingy job of our past. It's now an emerging industry with a lot of cool ways to get involved. You don't have to go to a four-year university. You can focus on things that make sense to you. What do you enjoy doing? There's a place for that in the manufacturing workforce. And why is this needed? Manufacturing is critical to national security and to the prosperity of our country and of the world. So the more we're able to produce, the more people we're able to get into the workforce here, and the more we're able to reshore our production. We've seen supply chain challenges during the pandemic. You couldn't get toilet paper, you couldn't get semiconductor chips, you couldn't really get anything because so much of what we rely on is now produced outside the United States. Bringing back that manufacturing capability or shore up our supply chain issues while making a sector and a workforce stronger as well. But that's not the only answer. By 2030, it's estimated that about 40,000 to 50,000 job openings are going to be available in manufacturing with nobody to fill them. So just trying to convey that manufacturing is cool is not the complete answer, but it's part of the answer. So I tell us here who really are getting more engaged with the younger generation, trying to educate them about what's cool, what's interesting. Don't forget about manufacturing. Manufacturing is just as interesting. It's just as profitable for the younger generation. And it can really leave a lasting impact, not only on the community and the worker, but also on the US. So don't forget about manufacturing. It's cool, I promise. I tell myself, hey, if I could go back in time, forget economics, I would have been in the manufacturing plant. So just keep it in mind. It's a great occupation. You can make a lot of good money, and it's not as rigorous in terms of the schooling. And it's a lot cooler, too. It's not just hammering nails. It's also working with robots, working with artificial intelligence to solve problems. So manufacturing is cool. I promise. Take my word for it. Thank you, Toastmasters.
Thank you, Fawaz, and thank you, Nico, for another excellent impromptu speech. We always look forward to you giving your impromptu speeches. You've become like the expert. I think Juan kind of originated it, but you've taken over the reins of that domain of speaking. So thank you so much for stepping up to the plate. I forgot to start the timer. And giving a speech today. Thank you for the topic as well. Manufacturing is cool. It's related to your job, so that was great as a way for us to understand your role at NIST and what you're looking at, what you're working on. And we really enjoyed learning about how manufacturing has evolved over time and what it can offer to the younger generation or even the people on the call today. I wanted to highlight some of the things that I noticed in your speech that really stood out as something that really was effective in you giving your speech. The first one was your hand gestures. You're in person today, even though you're by yourself still. And you tried to stand up, but having to sit down because of the technology, you still were able to emphasize your points and accentuate your points using your hand gestures, which I thought was really effective. And also, I could tell in your vocal variety, in your vocal inflections, the enthusiasm you have for the topic. So I think that was effective in um, bringing the audience into the topic, making them more interested, was how interested and enthusiastic you are in your topic. And I think that if it's not if this speech is not something that you've been giving in person to maybe young people, it sounded like a speech that could be given if you were to speak to a group of students or a group of parents, something that would be effective in maybe piquing their interest in learning more about manufacturing as a career. So I thought that was good. Also, good in your speech, I thought of the examples you brought in on how a few ways manufacturing has evolved over the years from being a dusty, maybe grimy job to something where you could possibly be using robots or gaming controllers, something that maybe we hadn't thought about in terms of what a manufacturing job actually looks like. So a lot of good things attached to that speech. one of the things that I noticed that maybe you might be able to improve, I know that as an impromptu speech, you weren't necessarily working from a structure, but I think that even though it wasn't as structured as maybe a formal speech one would give, I think your thoughts flowed really organically and was pretty organized in how it came out. However, during the conclusion, or what I thought was you wrapping up the speech, you kind of brought in ideas that weren't introduced in the main body of the speech. So I thought that was maybe a little distracting as I got in the mode of, oh, he's wrapping up. Nice. You're going to emphasize and reiterate some of the key points of your speech, but you brought in other topics like supply chain issues and other things. So I think maybe in the future, if you wanted to have more of a solid conclusion, you could use that time to emphasize what you've already mentioned in your speech. And of course, the challenge, I think adding images would be perfect with a speech like this. Maybe show an old manufacturing factory compared to a new one, or some of the things that people are manufacturing these days. But overall, excellent speech. Thank you so much for introducing us to this topic, and maybe we'll hear more in the future.